Cool. Well, why don't we get started if that's okay?
Sure.
And Sanjay, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, your role at Vovia, and what got you there.
Yeah, sure. My name is Sanjay Fernando. I'm a senior digital specialist at Vovia. I have about 8 years of experience in digital marketing and paid media specifically. I've been at Vovia for now almost 2.5 years. Before that, I was working at another integrated agency in Brisbane,
Hmm.
and then I was jumping across a couple of other places in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and Singapore. Sri
Oh
Lanka is
wow.
where I'm originally from. So all of that has been in digital marketing, but the past 4 years has been specifically in paid media. That's my specialization.
Gotcha. How long have you been with Vovia for?
It's close to 2.5 years now, 2 years and 4 months, I
Nice.
think. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So they're
Cool.
keeping you around, so you must be really good.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm really excited when your team reached out to us to talk about some of the content that you've been producing for Vovia themselves. I was really interested in that article that you wrote. AI can make the ad, but it can't make the strategy.
hmm
So I'd love to go through for this talk or for this conversation. I'd love to talk about you know that article and then some questions to follow up on it. Can you kind of give us a bit of a brief overview of what was discussed in that article that you wrote?
Yeah, sure. So you know how almost all the agencies or brands right now is like hopping on AI, hopping into AI as it's like a trend or a buzzword. The problem
Hmm.
I saw was most clients were trying to make it as the end itself rather than, the means to an end kind of a situation. They were focusing on that as the price rather than all the other foundational work your media agency or your team could do on. So I thought, why don't I revisit this in the lens of creative strategy? Because at
Hmm.
Bovia, my role, even though it's into paid media, I also interact with a lot of creative agencies when we do briefing and things on. And I see most of the time their input when it comes to creating a creative strategy relies heavily on AI. So that's what got me ticked into, you know what, someone gotta stand up and talk about this. So what I'm trying to tell is you can get AI to do your research, pull reports, pull insights, or be more organized, or even drive that efficiency, start generating more assets, more volume, but it has to be a human, a brand custodian who has to get the strategy right, who has to lay out what are we trying to achieve, where are we trying to go with that. And sure, AI can help us. It can be the vehicle we, use to go there, but it has to be a human who does the whole strategy side of this. And that's what the article basically outlines.
I wanted to. There's this line that you have, which I love. I wonder if you could just talk about this, Jarek. I'm jumping off off topic a little bit
Yeah,
here,
do your
but
thing.
there's so you talk about Meta's algorithm and how it's using and with the Andromeda update. There's a variety of formats, hooks, angles. They're looking for more and more variations. And you made this point that I think is so great. The 50 variations of the same concept isn't diversity, it's noise. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what you see as the problem with that?
Sure, yeah. I feel like the biggest problem has to be clients using creative diversity and creative iteration interchangeably. So, creative diversity, what Meta and the algorithms across most platforms are asking, is basically asking brands to create distinct or specifically tailored creatives for a specific persona, a pain point, or a use case. That's diversity. So you're addressing different use cases, different problems, different pain points in a product solution or something. Creative iteration is when you take one distinct creative like that, and then you start changing one or two elements, like a headline, the background color, or the person on the image, or something like that. What happens right now is with all these AI tools, you can definitely achieve the creative iteration part of it. Like you take one image and then ask AI to generate like 50 different variations. change the background colors and all of that. But that doesn't solve the problem where the platform's asking, no, give me more diversity into that. So that's like the first aspect of that. If I had to give you like an example into that, imagine like a condo home builder. So the home builder could address a retired couple or an empty nester using like a very polished ad image, like a corporate style ad image, encouraging downsizing. The same home builder can also tap into like a trendy real estate content creator and create a couple of UGC style home tours, fast-paced videos. So that's diversity. That's different types of personas being addressed, different ad creatives and formats being used. Iteration could be the home builder or the agency taking that polished corporate style image ad and then changing like a promotion call out or an element. So that's what I'm trying to achieve by saying you need to have creative diversity in the accounts now because that's what the algorithm yearns. It can't be just a simple change of background colors or a headline now.
Typically, when we ask for like ad specs and stuff like that, and then we throw in 50 different variations of it, it's just saying the same thing over and over again with different colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying right now is that, Meta sees that and it doesn't really work anymore, or how do you kind of define what genuine creative diversity is, would you say, when you're
Yeah.
planning a media campaign?
Yeah, exactly. So what Meta says to us right now with their latest algorithm updates is basically Meta's algorithm is capable of taking learnings at an asset level. So it's smart enough to see an ad and like coming going back to that home builder example, it's smart enough to see there's a retired couple on the image with a different text on image that might be encouraging downsizing. And then it's also smart enough to look some of the UGC assets or like a young family on the images and recognize this is geared towards more younger audiences. So Meta saying basically based, it takes signals from the creatives as targeting input. So if you are giving the same image or the same video with different background colors, you aren't giving enough signals for the algorithm to learn and scale. So that's why Meta is saying you need to have a good foundation when it comes to structuring creative diversity. And obviously, whatever you're feeding into the algorithm has to be relevant to who you're trying to target. But as long as you have enough diversity, that way the algorithm can get enough learning and then start scaling the campaigns. So that's the whole reason for having like a very good campaign structure, and then also for having good creative diversity in the account.
I kind of wonder though, like, I really struggle with this because there's a lot of research that shows that creative doesn't wear out; it wears in. It's good creative. I mean, shit creative is shit creative, and you can't fix that. But it wears in, and so by creating all these different variations and variants, you're kind of fragmenting the brand impact. And so you don't have the consistency across different channels because you're trying to create, or not even different channels, just across the same campaign because Meta's forcing you to make different assets. And then you're not delivering one asset with impact, you're delivering multiple dozens of them, which may not build on one another. So each one becomes its own sort of separate campaign. They don't look like each other because they're intended, because Meta's telling you their creative performance, quote unquote, is better when it's not done that way. But then you wonder, like, is it just because they're measuring clicks or click-through rate, or is it because they're measuring the impact on people's, like on your business impact? Like they're not measuring that part, the mental, like either the mental penetration or like the brand awareness or like the business impact. They're just measuring whatever they can measure on the click side of things. And so I'm wondering, like, are we are we just letting the AI be the tail that's wagging the dog?
Yeah, so two parts into it. First one, when it comes to consistency, we've been having conversations with our brand custodians, like for the past couple of months, as we've seen this. Consistency across different ad platforms is going to be something really hard to achieve now going forward. So, like, let's take Meta as an example again. Their whole roadmap is about you feeding in like relevant input, and then the algorithm's gonna create its own ad and deliver that. That's like a brand nightmare for actual brands who have their guidelines and everything established. Same thing on Google. If you take like a channel like PMax or even AI Max, where in the near future for search ads, we're not gonna feed in specific copy headlines and descriptions. The algorithm's gonna start taking a active role into writing that copy when it comes to conversational ads. So
Mm-hmm.
consistency is going to be a slightly harder thing to achieve across these platforms with the AI evolution. But yeah, I agree with you. Does the algorithm actually look at the actual business performance before it starts deciding, oh, this creative is better than the other creative? It comes down to the brand and the organization itself. Have they actually connected their business data? Have they closed the loop with the algorithm and the actual business data? So if you go into that home builder example, has the home builder connected their CRM or any other source of data back into the platform? So that way the algorithm is able to understand person X who clicked on this particular ad also converted later as a lead the CRM. So you're feeding in, you're basically, it's like gold in, gold out, rubbish in, rubbish out kind of a scenario. So as
But
long as you close the loop, the algorithm's able to understand this particular creative is driving that.
but there's a whole bunch of things that the algorithm you'll never be able to close the loop on things um, like there's just a lot of things that happen offline. I mean, a if you take best case scenario, 15%, let's call it 20% of all purchases are made on ecom. That's best
Uh,
case scenario.
yeah, I feel like it also taps into the whole attribution thing. So that could
Yeah,
be like
that's what
another
I mean.
whole
So
podcast on
80% of
its
the
own.
signal is being lost because it's not happening digitally. So then, like, what are we optimizing
Yeah,
for?
so that again goes into how are you looking at attribution? That could be one thing. Like some of my clients, when we take onboard them, they look at Meta and they're like, oh, we have like 20x ROAS on some of these. And I'm like, do you really have 20x ROAS? And I change
Right.
attribution to 1 day click and it goes down to like 2 or 3. And they're like, oh, so attribution definitely plays a role here. But then again, like my whole thing where I say a human has to play the role, it also taps into like the consumer behavior side of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Meta could be just looking at click-through rate, thumbs up ratio, and things like that, and then trying to push spend to a certain AdSense assets. So that's where perhaps a human comes into the role. It might have the necessary, I don't know, cultural context even that the algorithm might not have. So that's where you can pause ads, you can have slice of ads. That's where the human comes into the picture again and try to direct the algorithm in the way you want. It's just a whole can of worms when you go into that where you have to bring in attribution, human
Mm-hmm.
intervention, and then making sure you have all the correct conversion APIs and all of these things connected. But yeah,
Let's talk about, your frameworks. And I guess, from a digital strategist side of things, helping creatives come up with the creative angle. What are some of the things that you should do before even touching an AI tool in terms of, trying to figure out what the creative angle is for a campaign?
yeah. So especially in the realm of a creative strategy, I feel like the first and foremost thing any strategist or a specialist should be doing is basically identifying the challenge or the goal what they're trying to achieve, where they want to go with the strategy they're trying to lay out. So before you jump into like any of the LLMs or like the Gen AI tools, you gotta give AI directions on what we are trying to achieve, what our goal is. So that way that directs everything else the Gen AI tool does after that. Secondly, you might have data insights that the specific LLM or the AI model might not have. You might have business data. Obviously, you can anonymize the data if you want, or if you are in a closed work environment like a Gemini landscape, your data is protected. You can feed that data. You can share past of performance. You can give insights into the audiences that the LLM model might not have. Because these are again trained on the general internet, right? Unless you are working with a very specific, like a financial model, all the models are just trained on what's readily available in the internet. So if you have any business insights that these models might not have, that might help you, create the best creatives or the approach, you got to feed them. And then finally, and most importantly, you got to lay out the guardrails. You got to share your brand guidelines, help it choose its tone, voices, and whatnot. If you just let AI just go on a rampage and start creating me assets, obviously none of the brand custodians are going to like it. So you got to feed in the guardrails to make sure your output's going to match your expectations.
Hey, I'd love to like click into that a little bit too, just in terms of, I guess, best practices. Maybe this is overlap between what you were just saying, but there's this idea about super performers, like using. How do you use AI properly for strategic intent? Like if it's not going to produce the creative, how do you think about using it in terms of the human intervention part? Like, what is the best way to do that, either for creative or for media planning, or I don't know, targeting and segment, like whatever way you think of it, or you've got experience with it. Just what does that look like to have it as a true partner?
Yeah. I mean, if I had to simplify it, I would say basically don't outsource your thinking into AI. Definitely tap on AI's efficiency on getting things done faster, but just don't outsource your whole thinking, strategic thinking side of that to AI.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to share like an example, like us at Bovia, we use some of our own AI agents to scrape Reddit and other forums when it comes to like B2B clients. We do that because we're looking at what our actual customers might be talking about specific products or solutions on channels like Reddit. They might share their pain points and whatnot. What we do is we get our AI agents to scrape that and then come up with multiple pain points. If we had to do that manually, it would have taken hours, but with a trained AI agent, it'll do it in a matter of minutes. So once we have like, okay, these are the top pain points people talk about in the last few months, last year or something like that, we take those pain points and then we start briefing creative angles in line with that pain points. Obviously, we don't let the AI jump the whole gun and then be like, oh, create the creatives now based on pain points. We look at business context. We look at our own supply limitations and things like that before we decide on which pain point we should be attacking on. So that's where that synergy comes on. We rely on that AI efficiency, but we also make sure a specialist or a strategist is on the driving seat and picking on what to work on, what signals to use as insights.
Yeah. How do you validate the insights you're getting from the AI? Like, you must have to do, I don't know, do you do user research? Like, do you do customer discovery interviews, or do you do focus groups or anything like that just to validate what the AI is saying, or do you just kind of trust what?
No, definitely don't trust it. Like, a lot of our clients come up with some odd questions sometimes, and most of the time they are AI hallucinations. They
Hmm.
haven't put the right guardrails in it, and then AI hallucinating and giving you weird suggestions, weird places in the platforms to click. So definitely don't trust it blindly. So Derek, yeah, we definitely look at research, clients research of like when it comes to B2B customers, the best part is most of the time your the client pool or your total addressable market is pretty small. People can have surveys, talk to their past customers, get insights from there. And then in addition to that, we do our own research when it comes to like channel selections. Like we'll rely on like Numeris, Echo, things like that.
Hmm.
When it comes to like e-com or like bigger retail brands, we might look into platforms like Clearlake, which gives us spending patterns and data and all of that. So we definitely take what AI is suggesting, but then look at it in a lens where we are bringing in all the other factors into the same picture, and then
Mm-hmm.
making sure, again, like I said, we look at our strategy and then we pick what we want to target, what we want to attack, and then work on that, then move it into production and things like that.
The just thinking about the reverse of that, like AI is really good at confirming our biases. So
Yep.
if if we're using it and not really as a true partner, I just wondered if you could talk about if you've done anything with AI through like your own instructions you've set up or the way you've created them so that it critiques your thinking so you get the best possible outcome, not just a confirmation what you think is right.
Yeah. I feel like that boils down into like we used to call it prompt engineering. It sounded all
Mm-hmm.
fancy and technical, but it's basically you asking. Like, remember how I mentioned earlier, you got to give it the objective or what you're trying to achieve, then all the insights, and then the guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
Another iteration of a guardrail could be where you're asking AI to verify its own work. Sometimes you must have experience on your own personal life when you're like asking ChatGPT or someone to do something, and then you have your doubts and you're like, "Are you sure about this?" And then it's like, "Oh, Mark, you're correct. This was wrong." So that's where those kind of guardrails come into play. Even in personal life, like I use this Google Fitbit thing. It's completely driven by a Gemini AI coach. Today morning, I was supposed to go to the gym, but I was like, "No, I don't feel like doing that." It's completely agreeing with me. Like, yes, you seem to be tired. But then my readiness goes like, no, you can't go to the gym. So yeah, those guardrails have to come into it. It's not that you don't trust AI completely, but you need to have like a healthy dose of skepticism to make sure whatever it's suggesting or whatever it's recommending aligns with what your strategy is, where you want to go.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Like I feel like a lot of people are using AI in a creative way, and they're all using it differently. What would you say to, I don't know, let's say, for folks who are, still stuck or maybe anti AI on a creative standpoint, maybe they're graphic designers, maybe they're copywriters, and so on and so forth. How should they use AI to kind of upskill themselves to become more of like a creative strategist that, the industry might need right now?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, when I was like a fresher to digital marketing in the industry, I don't know, like 7, 8 years ago, there was a concept floating around called the T-shaped digital marketer.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
basically where digital marketers have like a broad array of
Yeah.
skills and exposure into like email marketing, social media, and all of that. But then you also have one or two skill sets where you have like a deeper expertise in. So in my case, that's paid media. I feel like that might be the natural evolution for traditional media buyers or content creators even. Like if you take like a graphic designer or a content creator as an example, they might have like a broad array of skills when it comes to Adobe softwares like Cloud Suite and things like that, Canva and all of that, video editing softwares. But I feel like it's time they also start exposing themselves into some of these AI models on how to be better at prompting, prompt engineering. It could also be them either getting some kind of an exposure into ad platforms and analytical platforms where they start learning how to read some of these performance insights and data. And
Hmm.
then again, they can still have that deep expertise when it comes to content creation, art direction, and things like that. But they also need to have that broad array of experience. I know people always say like jack of all trade, master of none, but then you have that new version of it that where it says oftentimes better than master of one. So it's always good to have that broad array of experience because with AI and the way it's evolving, I feel like it's going to favor generalist more, but then you need to have that deep expertise in one or two fields where you can actually stand out and add value.
I've been writing a lot about and doing a lot of research on the T-shaped person. There's a lot of things in there that I think are really interesting in what you just said. Some of it, though, I also think where there's an opportunity. I don't know if you have anything to comment on this, but I'd love to get your thoughts. Like you've mentioned prompt engineering a few times, and so prompt engineering I think is okay, but it's less useful than setting up instructions and a like a framework for thinking in a project. so that way it can be replicated. And I think some of the T-shaped components that you're talking about, all of that can be loaded into like a knowledge base and instructions, and then it just behaves the way that you're training it to, and then it can become like really a true partner, as opposed to just having to prompt everything in every single time like a chat. I don't know if you have you done anything like that with projects, either through, I don't know which LLM you're using, but a gem or a project or anything like that.
Yeah, so remember how I mentioned earlier also, basically when it comes to when it comes to projects or gems, so Vovia is basically on the Google Gemini workspace.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have done is, instead of sometimes relying on these models on the general internet, what we have done is we have started developing gems of our own.
Mm-hmm.
So the sources could be the LLM itself, but then also learnings from some of our specialists. So like when it comes to me, some of the creative strategy side of stuff, we have a gem where anyone in client service can also interact with that gem
Mm-hmm.
before they come to us if they have to. But then again, the problem here is basically, as an agency, we are using our individual expertise and skills, and we're just democratizing it. So anyone can access our insights and knowledge at any time. But when it comes to any other brand or any other organization who doesn't have that kind of a setting, they are just relying on the general internet learnings. I
Mm-hmm.
always bring this up with some of my clients' interaction. They always ask me, hey, if this model or if Seed Dance or if Nano Banana can create these images, do I really need to work with some of these creative agencies? And I always tell them, look, with AI, you're always, we call it the regression to the mean.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're always getting closer to the average level of human creativity. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing breakthrough with those. If you wanted breakthrough, like you'll see a lot of creative agencies also talking about it right now. They're always saying all these AI creatives look like the same, and if you need something like a winning creative winning ad, you need to rely on humans. I
Mm-hmm.
partially agree with it because what I see on a day-to-day basis with some of my clients with over-reliance on AI, they are just reflecting an average level of human creativity, nothing much. So that's where I feel like you still need that human involvement. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if everyone relies on Meta's ad platform to build its own creative ads or assets, all the brand assets will have the same look and feel. It might have the same look and feel. So if everyone's relying on the same AI engine, it has to be either the inputs you're feeding into the platforms as a brand organization,
Mm-hmm.
or how you handle that, how you handle the whole output and the input. Those are the factors that are going to basically get you past that winning mark, I would say. Uh, and yeah, so again, we are partially on the fence. We are democratizing all our learnings and things like using with gems, but we are still making sure there's a human strategist at the driving seat to
Sure.
make sure, are you looking at the right context? Are you looking at the right business strategy and making sure you take a decision on that?
It's a great takeaway. I think, like, to start with, sort of the idea about beginning with the end in mind. Are you looking at the right business outcome? And then what's the right strategy to get there, as opposed to going, oh, AI, let's just do everything it's
Yeah.
doing and follow the leader there. I think that's a great takeaway for everybody, really, just to keep focused on the outcomes that really matter and not necessarily the ones that the AI is giving you.
Yeah, totally agree. Sanjay, this was great. I'll definitely have your blog in the show notes of the podcast, and we'll promote your blog on LinkedIn as well as this podcast. Is there anything else that you'd like to share from a Vovia perspective in terms of, making sure that, that human strategist is still in that driver's seat, as you mentioned? Anything else you want to promote from Vovia or yourself or?
Yeah, sure. So Vovias has always been like a firm believer of like media buyers not being like button pushers. And that's basically a reflection of our specialists now being strategists. Even though we don't call ourselves strategists yet, but still we firmly believe everyone in the team has to understand what's the rationale behind the strategy and contribute at any level possible. And then Vovia also does a splendid job of, like I mentioned earlier, democratizing access to AI. We have a multitude of different platforms from Gemini, Claude, and to other special platforms when it comes to creative and content generation. But we are also making sure the team organically get into the groove. We do lunch and learn about AI efficiencies. We do cross-functional team training, where a DMT, a digital specialist, might sit down with the client service team and then talk about some of these efficiencies. Vovia firmly believes in reskilling employees with AI capabilities rather than just relying on expensive AI tools and hoping everything will get better as it goes. I know I'm from Vovia, but even if I was looking outside from like a third party point of view, I kind of believe Vovia's at a really good place right now in the whole play with the AI evolution. It's just a matter of time making sure everyone's on board and no one's left behind.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast here. And yeah, really excited to, consume more of the blogs that you've been writing. So yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much for being
and thank you for having me. Really excited and love the good work you guys are doing. Tracy's another team member. We always look at some of the podcasts and always talk about, hey, what happened here and what happened today. So keep up the good work. We really enjoy your podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you very
It's
much.
nice to know we got a couple listeners out there.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
at least
do.
at least two now. Yeah, two that aren't just me and Mark.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
Awesome.
thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Sanjay.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.
Ciao.